We've had a pretty stacked year of anime in general for 2023, but we've had an especially strong fall in particular. Each episode of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 and Frieren seems to drive a considerable amount of discussion. Spy Family and Dr. Stone return as well, and plenty of newer anime are getting their shine, such as Apothecary Diaries and 100 Girlfriends. However, an anime that I wish had a lot more conversation revolving around it, because it truly deserves it, goes by the name Undead Unluck. Now, I don't want to pretend like this anime isn't talked about at all. At the very least, in the West, Undead Unluck has actually been somewhat popular. Japan is a bit of a different story though, as the series sits in sort of this weird limbo area. It's consistently popular enough not to get axed, but it also hasn't really taken a step forward into the limelight like a lot of Weekly Shonen Jump manga do after their anime adaptations. Looking at this sales chart that I probably don't understand as well as I should, despite the fact that I'm ready to enter the script, the sales for Undead Unluck with the anime starting to air versus, say, the sales for something like Mashle, which already had its anime run, are night and day. Basically, these colors all indicate how many units were sold per volume per week of the month. The key on the side can help you determine which color is which, and the darker colors indicate that the numbers were reported by Oricon, and the lighter from Shoseki Weekly. Anything from Oricon also means that the sales were in the top 50 for the week, while Shoseki numbers mean that it was in the top 500. The first volume especially didn't see much of an uptick in October at all, despite the introduction of the series as an anime. Mashle, on the other hand, was selling nearly triple what Undead Unluck was doing if you compare even their best volume sales. And don't even get me started on the Jujutsu Kaisen comparison, because it's rough. It's disheartening to see to an extent, but as long as the series isn't axed, that's all you can really ask for. Moral of the story is, though, sales are bullshit and don't indicate whatsoever the quality of a series, so who cares? Like I said earlier though, it is pretty popular in the West, which tends to point towards a strong adaptation. Hulu featured it as part of its Animehem event during Anime NYC, and was even able to bring the author, Yoshifumi Tozuka, over to the US for autograph sessions. Enough about all the outside jargon and buzzwords that had no real effect on how I view the anime though. Just an episode or two of my podcast makes it very clear that I can be pretty harsh when it comes to the criticisms I have for Battle Shonen, so you know it truly means something when I make a video praising one. While Undead Unluck does follow the recent standard of a secret society of people fighting against a supernatural threat, it changes up the formula enough to keep its concept fresh, and the power system especially is one that I really enjoy, as it creates many interesting scenarios for how the characters interact with the world around them. It's kind of like the Buzz Lightyear on the shelf meme, but if like one of the buzzes was a different color. I don't want to go into spoilers though, so I'm going to explain everything going forward using information that comes within the first few episodes, with maybe a hint or two to the later things, but nothing too spoilery. The way that powers work in the series is actually just right under your nose. Basically, in this world, there are special people called negators, and they have the power to erase concepts in the world, specific ones. For simplicity's sake, take Undead and Unluck. Unluck is an ability that negates the luck of anyone who comes into contact with the female main character, Fuko. Every ability has set conditions to activate, and even their effectiveness may be influenced by certain factors as well. Fuko's ability requires her to make skin contact with another person, and the severity of the ability relies on how much she likes the person, as well as how much contact she has made with them and for how long. Undead, on the other hand, works a bit differently. With the abilities comes a stipulation of whether it's meant to be used on targets, like Unluck, or against the user themselves, as in the case of Undead. Andy, our male main character, can negate his own death through regeneration. He has many creative ways to use this ability to his advantage, like using the high-speed regeneration as a boost to his speed. It's just an interesting concept for powers rather than just having something extra to the character. They remove something entirely and have to use it to their advantage. The way that these powers fit into the world around them though is also a point of intrigue. Pretty much every concept in the world is marked down as a rule. The stars in the sky are a rule that doesn't yet exist in the world, and so there are no stars, just the sun and the moon. The concepts that don't exist can come into being through means I won't spoil, and the ones that exist already also exist in the form of actual living creatures. Think of it like having a Dark Souls boss for everyday things. There's still lots more interesting things about the world itself, but I think it's far more interesting to find out about the greater details of everything that's going on just by watching the anime. If you like most Battle Shonen titles though, you'll probably be interested in this one. I mentioned earlier that Undead Unluck follows one of the typical formulas in recent times with the whole secret society shtick, and there's a reason for that. The author mentioned in an interview with Anime Corner, which I will reference a few times in this video and link to the interview is in the description, that they were an avid reader of Shonen Jump and knew that the turnaround for Weekly Shonen Jump series could be quick. So after a while, they had determined what worked and what didn't. Even if it isn't dominating in sales, just not getting axed is basically a testament that their personal insight into how Shonen Jump works was practically on the money. It has a dedicated fan base, and that was enough to get it noticed by David Productions. If you've seen anything from David Productions recently, then you know that the quality of anime that they make is pretty damn high. Even if I wasn't that big on stuff like Fire Force, there's no denying that the strength of the production was there. And Undead Unluck actually shares some similarities in the style. Andy using his blood to fly around is reminiscent of the fire mobility in Fire Force, and so it's no wonder that David Productions were actually the ones who requested to work on this specific series as an anime. The author stated as such, "They actually came to us wanting to turn Undead Unluck into an anime, and they were just so excited. They even prepared a little pitch short anime of what the animation could look like. We really could feel that they were excited to work on it. That's how we ended up working with David Production." Typically in anime production, you'll see the opposite, where the publisher will go to an anime studio and request that they create an adaptation for them. Obviously, the process is far more complicated than that, but this isn't that kind of video. Alongside the studio's desire to create a great anime experience comes a strong collaboration between author, publisher, and anime staff. The author discusses with the staff about the particular settings that they're animating, along with the fact that both the author and the editor sit in voice acting sessions and even the character designing sessions in order to make sure everything comes together as smoothly as possible. It would seem that this desire came to fruition as the production quality is both strong and consistent. So far, there hasn't really been any one scene that will blow you away in terms of how it's animated, but there's no scenes that I've noticed anything falter in regards to the quality. I will say that if I had one tiny criticism to give, it would be that the direction of the latest arc felt a little off at times, but this is more of a nitpick, and likely it had to do with wanting certain things to happen on certain episodes, and they need to fill the runtime in certain places to make that happen. Outside of that though, the direction as a whole has been pretty stellar. The anime especially shines in more dimly lit scenes where the team uses the lighting to their advantage in order to make sequences stand out. What helps make the best moments as cinematic as possible though is the strength of the character writing, making you care even for characters that you haven't known quite as long as the main duo. I've praised the anime on numerous things by this point, but once again, I just want to say the characters really do stand out. I'm not going to say much about the characters outside of the main duo. They are interesting, and I don't want to take that away from them, but I also don't want to spoil things, so I'm just going to talk about the main two. Andy, having been around for a very long time due to his undead ability, has a strong sense for what's going on, and has adapted over time to the world that he's forced to live in. What's nice about this though is that even with all the experience he has, he's not some overpowered immortal being. He has shown to have a strong sense of analysis, but there's still room for Fuko to shine as well. Fuko herself is a character that for a long time has had to deal with the world on her own. Anyone that touches her is going to be faced with an issue of some kind. It may not kill them, but it very well could, and so she can't risk it. In most series, she would be relegated to the damsel in distress archetype, who occasionally gets her shine, but doesn't really do much because her ability isn't that offensive on its own, but she actually works very well in tandem with Andy. Him being able to survive her unluck and even use it as a weapon is one thing, but she has also been shown to have a strong sense of observation herself, which has aided Andy multiple times so far throughout the show, even though he is also very observant. The dynamic between someone who has experienced way too much of the world and someone who hasn't experienced the world that much at all is on display a lot of the time. Andy is typically very calm in any situation and doesn't get flustered, while Fuko, who is initially frightful of what's going on, is learning to take steps forward the more time she spends with Andy. Basic romance still gets her face all red, but slowly she's going to be able to adapt to the chaos surrounding her and finding a desire to live despite her circumstances. The plot for the anime is more complicated than what it seems, but even the starter plot gives us a few episodes of interesting content on its own. Andy wants to find a way to break past his immortality and finally rest, and Fuko's insane ability gives him a glimmer of hope in achieving that. The things that she puts him through and he survives make you truly wonder if it's even possible to kill him through any conventional mean. Obviously, we're going to get the answer to that question one day, and I will likely read the manga after the anime finishes, so I can experience this incredibly fun story in its entirety. Now, before we get to the conclusion, I feel like I should mention this. Before the anime came out, a lot of people were worried about it because apparently the beginning was supposed to have a bunch of fan service and it's supposed to be really weird, and while there was some weird moments, it really isn't that bad. I'm gonna be honest, if you've watched more than one anime, you're probably going to be fine and get over it very quickly. And it also goes away very quickly on its own. It's not a big deal, is all I want to say. Overall, this anime has been a blast to watch each week, and I really do wish there is more discourse surrounding it. One can wonder that if it aired in a weaker season that perhaps it would have gotten more talk surrounding it, but that type of speculation doesn't mean anything. Though the winter season for 2024 is looking to have a lack of large titles, so maybe it can stand out later in its 2-core run. I highly suggest this anime to pretty much anyone. Whether or not you're into battle shonen, it's something that I feel like can be enjoyable to watch and interesting to watch develop. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more anime content like this, and I hope to see you in another video. Thank you and goodbye.